I was contacted by one of the producers of the show, Go Back to Where You Came From. He called me up out of the blue. I thought it was a prank call, but he explained the premise of the show, and he described it as a reality TV show, which scared the living daylights out of me. But I was concerned about the idea of a reality show just diminishing the issue and sensationalising the issue of refugees rather than deepening people's understanding. But fortunately, my fears were not founded.
When the boat crashed coming into Christmas Island, I thought, serve your bastards right.
I think that we have the capacity to take perhaps more refugees.
6 ordinary Australians will experience a journey you could never imagine.
Oh, you're s***ing me.
No. I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Ignore it.
I don't want to listen to you.
Water coming in everywhere down here.
The life-risking journey in reverse of a refugee.
Mate, we're going under.
How desperate do you get to put your children on something like this? Someone's just been arrested there by the looks of it. There's people running everywhere.
I had no idea it was going to be this full-on.
Unstaged, unscripted.
I think this is good. They should be doing this in Australia.
Is this serious? You're asking us to go to Iraq?
I don't know if it makes me feel safer or just more terrified. I was surprised they chose me because of I think my views are fairly middle of the road. Even though I'm pro-refugee and I think that we have I applaud our intake and think we should increase it. I thought that maybe there would be somebody even more pro-refugee than me, somebody who was just vehemently, campaigning to bring more people. I think the time I remember the most was after we'd gone off and met our respective refugee families, and we came back together, and suddenly Ray was, saying, "Oh, Africans, are the real refugees," banding around topics like that, saying they should be bringing in more Africans, and I'm saying, well, hang on, just because they're from Iraq, it doesn't mean they're not real refugees, just because they came by boat. So I remember that moment particularly, just thinking, what am I dealing with? How am I going to convince these people otherwise? Initially I thought I might end up in Sudan, because the reason that they contacted me in the first place is because I'd written a song called The Redneck Love Song, which had been, it's a very tongue-in-cheek Romeo and Juliet of the outback, because I come from central New South Wales. But it had been erroneously mentioned in a Sydney Morning Herald article about Sudanese refugees in Tamworth, and there was quite a bit of opposition. The mayor at the time was opposed to more Sudanese refugees coming into town. And at the tail end of the article it mentioned, and Gleny Rae and her Tamworth Playboys will be in town for the Tamworth Country Music Festival, performing their song, Redneck Love Song. It had nothing to do with the article, but obviously the journalist had Googled redneck and Tamworth, and voila, there I was. So that's how they contacted me, and I thought that perhaps that tenuous link with Sudanese might have put me in that group. But no, I was sent to the Middle East, and although I'd thrown that idea around, when they announced, when we were in Amman in Jordan, and they said you were going to Baghdad, my heart was in my mouth. I couldn't believe it. That's pretty heavy, isn't it? Oh! I don't know if it makes me feel safer or just more terrified.
The vehicles that you guys are getting ready to take a ride in are designed to keep you safe and in one piece in case anything were to happen. We're going to be going down the highway at a fair rate of speed, and we're going to be moving kind of like through New York City traffic when you're in a hurry on a motorcycle. You split lanes, you go around cars. We kind of do that, but we do it in a gentle manner that gives us a lot of room on the highway, so we can tell if somebody's attempting to get up close to us. If that happens, we have an SOP in place that allows us to take actions to ensure they don't get too close. If anything were to blow up as we're going through, this is quite heavily armored. You're probably going to have a ringing in your head, and that's about it, and a cool story to tell people when you get home.
It gave me lots of patience. It gave me the ability to bite my tongue and to be more of a listener and a learner myself. I really thought a lot about the kind of how I would be portrayed and perhaps how I would be during the show. I mean, as my role as a performer is as an entertainer, and I thought, well, maybe I can be the entertainer, but when I thought about it, I realised that the importance of the show was about me taking a journey and learning and being able to reflect other people's opinions and also be a foil for them. So I really wanted to listen to the other participants' points of view. Well, our society is based on diversity. Essentially, you know, the first boat people were, arrived in the first fleet, and they were kind of, you know, I guess you could say they were legal refugees. They were sent out of England, Ireland, because of their poverty and the crimes they committed in means to survive. So things haven't really changed that much. And I think in terms of the diversity, it's always important to remember, you know, the Indigenous culture as well, because to be honest, some of the things that I saw overseas are on par with some of the communities, Aboriginal communities I've seen in Central Australia, which are like, you know, they're like the forgotten elements of Australian society. The Australian government and lots of different groups are working to improve the health standards, the education of our Indigenous community. It's like the refugee issue. It's such a big problem. You can't just do what Kerry-Ann Kennelly said to me, is like, so what's the answer to the problem? It's a long journey, and it is an ongoing journey. Like any societal problem, it's a matter of constantly improving. And I like to think that as Australians, we can be world leaders on these problems, as we can in environmental awareness and research and development as well. There's no reason to say, why should we be the ones to act? We should be saying, let's be the ones to act. Let's be leaders in this area. And you know, Australia is a unique culture in terms of its multiculturalism, and I think that lots of other countries look to Australia to see how the multicultural plan can work. So let's just continually monitor what's going on and continue to strive to make it a better society for everyone, a more egalitarian society. There's always something you can do, and it starts from the very smallest action, like just saying hello to the Sudanese person that you know lives in your neighbourhood but you haven't spoken to, maybe out of respect or out of fear, whatever it is. Just go and say hello to them and say, hey, how you going? You know, do you need a hand with anything? One of the things that a lot of new arrivals need help with is learning to drive, and that's one thing that I've been offering my services to teach new arrivals the basics of driving. So there's always something we can do. We all have skills. Just by talking to them, it gives us a chance for us to learn and also to teach them about Australian culture. Moving on from that, there's lots of different organisations. There's refugee action networks in every capital city that you can subscribe to. You can become involved with petitions if you can't get to rallies, and a lot of people can't always do that. You can also find the refugee centre in your town or in your community and volunteer there. So there's plenty of things you can do, and just talk to people, talk about the topic, especially to young people. It was clear to see that two of the participants that hadn't changed their minds were very active in the Liberal Party, and I think that they were just so indoctrinated by John Howard's policies that, you know, and well, fair enough if you look up to John Howard and like his policies, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every decision he made was right. And I think his decision to turn back the boats was a very non-humanitarian approach, and as humans we can do better than that. Just be open-minded. I think go in with an open mind and strive to learn from your experience. It has changed my life, yes. It's made me, I think it's, when I came home from filming the show, the first thing that I thought about, the first thing I did was to go home and see my parents who live on a 100-acre block, and I just looked at that 100 acres in a different light. I could see, you know, Burmese refugees working there, you know, producing vegetables. I just thought we are underutilising this area and we are underutilising our natural resources, which can be, the resources which can be used to create a better life for people, whether that is, just basics of growing food or, producing better education, sharing ideas. I felt like everything tasted sweeter and yet more sour at the same time. So everything that I appreciated about my life with much more vigour, I also realised that, I was incredibly lucky and fortunate to live in this environment, to live in this country, to have all the things handed to me, like healthcare and education and safety.
Wasi yola bona ngani na, wasi yegi komo so baba.